Hello, and welcome to Unprintable, the official podcast of litreactor.com. My name is Cath Murphy. I'm the review editor at litreactor.com, and those of you who are regular listeners to the podcast will now be expecting me to introduce Josh and Rob, my regular podcast partners, but I'm going to amaze you all and not do that, because today I'm bringing you a special edition of Unprintable, where it's just me in conversation with the author, Jessica Bell. Hi, Jessica.
Hi, Cath.
Thanks very much for agreeing to talk to me today. Just a little bit of background for everybody. I was on NetGalley looking for books to review for the site for Lit Reactor.
Yeah.
And I came across your book, Bitter Like Orange Peel, and requested it because it looked interesting.
Right.
And when you replied to the request, you said that you would prefer that a woman reviewed the book.
Yes.
And that interested me because I hadn't appreciated up to that point that the book was specifically for women, although it was categorized under women's fiction.
Yes, it was in women's fiction and literary adult. They didn't give you many options to put it in, so.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Categorizing books is really interesting. The way a company like NetGalley decides to, it's obviously they have thought about the main categories that people are going to search, and I don't know what influenced them to pick what they did. It's actually run by a woman.
Oh, is it?
I think NetGalley. I think its chief executive is a woman.
Okay.
And obviously, women's fiction is something that people look for because that's what they picked.
Yeah.
And they've also got science fiction and fantasy. I think they've got crime.
Right.
But those are those men's fiction?
Yeah. No.
Those categories. What do you think about that?
Well, to me personally, I don't really think there is a huge divide between books aimed towards female and male demographic, because I read a variety of both. But just because I am open to reading a variety of genres doesn't necessarily mean everyone is. I mean, I can appreciate that particular books have particular demographics, and from a marketing perspective, I thought it best to target female readers for this novel, because ultimately it is about 6 women and their relationship with one man, and this man does not appear until the end of the book. The whole novel is written from the perspectives of these 6 women. And so I just thought that even though some men might be able to appreciate the story for what it is, that it's more likely that a woman would be able to relate to the characters in this book.
Right. Okay. I think that's fair enough, and I can understand why you picked that category to put it in.
Yeah.
But it's like there are writers. I'm going to pick Margaret Atwood because she's a favourite of mine, who write books pretty much exclusively about women.
Yeah.
Not always, because the recent trilogy that she's done is written. I'm just thinking the Year of the Flood.
Yeah.
And the one before that, Oryx and Crake, they are written from the perspective of men.
She sort of
mainly writes
speculative fiction then. I mean, before that, she was, it was more real to life characters, I found. And then she started slipping more science fiction. Yeah.
That's right. She doesn't like science fiction. She's calling it science fiction.
No.
She thinks that's about monsters and spacecraft. She's quoted as saying, it's very unfair to poor old Margaret Atwood, she probably didn't mean it quite like that, but she did say that at one point and got the world all upset. But she does call it spec fiction, which is fair enough. I guess I know what she's driving at. It's not.
They're actually quite sensitive to putting their books, to pigeonholing their books, because as an author, it's really hard to decide where you're going, to what audience you're going to push your work. I mean, I'm pretty sure Bitter Like Orange Peel could appeal to both sexes, but I think my characters are horribly tainted and by their pasts and extremely flawed and likable, and I exposed their flaws to the absolute limits, and
Right.
like I was trying to show how cruel people can become without a single attribute to redeem themselves when they're experiencing emotional pain. And so I obviously thought women would be more sensitive to this. Not to say that men aren't emotional, but aren't sensitive. But you know my point, right?
I think I do, and I know what you're getting at. It's interesting for you to say that about your characters, because writers are always warned against making their characters too unlikable.
Yes, I'm a bit of a risk taker, and I
Right.
don't
Okay.
really I sort of I'm always given. People often suggest that I make my characters more likable, but I just write how they speak to me, I guess, and I believe in them, and it's not. I don't necessarily relate my personal feelings or opinions to their behaviour, but that's how they ended up on the page, and I just felt I needed to be honest with how I wrote them, and they ended up like that, and I thought that's how they became organically. I'm not going to change who they are, and the story evolved from characters.
It can make it a tough read, though.
Yes, it is a tough read. It's not for the. It's not really a book that is going to sweep you off your feet and
it's not uplifting.
Cloud. Not uplifting at all. But I couldn't ignore it, these characters, just because of that, and I just felt I needed to write them.
Right. It's brave because it kind of it flies in the face of one of the fundamental functions of drama, I think, which is to give you people to sympathise in. Or even if you don't, I think that's a bit pat. You don't want your characters to be likeable, but you want them to be relatable.
Yes.
You want to see their flaws and yet understand where the flaws come from.
And I think it really depends who reads it too. I mean, because some readers have been able to identify with characters, and others have absolutely despised them. So it really it all depends on one's personal experience too, I think.
Possibly, yeah. I think it yeah. I mean, there's got to be, if you get the character, then you're much more likely to stay with them. Because you're kind of, you get invested.
Yes, absolutely.
There has to be that moment of thinking, oh yeah, I know who that is. I wonder what's going to happen to that person. I'm actually interested in that person. The way that you might be sitting on a bus and you see someone and you think something about them just catches your attention, and it can be very difficult to switch that off.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's, I think, probably that's what you go for as a novelist when you create people. But there are other men in this, in your book. I would say it's not exclusively written from the point of view of women.
No, there's one point of view from Ivy's boyfriend. He only speaks to the reader about 2 or 3 times, I think. So it's not a big chunk of the book, but I wanted to show the effect of Ivy's behaviour from someone else's perspective.
Right. And I mean, Ivy is, I think, probably the least likable out of everybody.
Yeah. That was my intention.
You succeeded.
Well, that's good.
You do want to smack around the head at points.
Yes.
And I just wonder where she came from.
What do you mean?
Well, where did you find her? Did you see her, or were you her at points?
No, I actually, the very first scene I wrote with Ivy was the scene in the cafe. I actually wasn't in the beginning when I started writing the book. I had one of the earlier drafts. It was Kit and Ailish, her mother, quite a while before Ivy appeared.
Ivy is, just to say that what you've got here is you've actually got 3 mothers and 3 daughters. and Ivy has a pretty cold, difficult mother called Eleanor.
Yep.
And Eleanor was the first wife of the father that we don't meet until the very end of the book. Mm-hmm. And then you have the second wife, or the second relationship, which is Ailish and Kit. Mm-hmm. So Ivy and Kit are half sisters, and then there's a third mother and daughter pair who we don't meet until a fair bit into the book. That's one of the revelations as we go through it. I like it. It's a very good setup. I like that very much, and I like the way that you captured that these three couples, kind of these three pairings of mothers and daughters, sort of orbit around. Is it Roger?
Roger, yes. I mean, they've all been affected by this man in various ways, but also I think they all share the fact that their lives have been shaped by his absence, really. Mm. So even though they all have separate issues, I think they've all they all have that in common, really.
Right. It bothers me. That bothered me a lot, because it's like women don't exist without men.
Oh.
It's like he's the central focus of the book.
Well,
I'm not saying you're wrong in what you did. Yeah, I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm just saying that kind of, when I got the image, I got what was happening, and I went, what?
Yeah.
This is actually interesting that you live in Greece, because we were chatting a bit before, and talked about where you live, because it's very mythological, isn't it?
Yes.
Don't you think?
It is.
And I don't object to that. I mean, I kind of get that it's a very traditional, well kind of smoothed or very graspable concept. Mm-hmm. But it still kind of made me go, what? Yeah. No, why isn't there a mother? A woman and three men and their sons gravitating around her. Do you see what I mean? It's like
an interesting story too, couldn't it?
I know, I'm being a bit of a feminist. I'm being a bit of a devil's advocate.
Everyone reacts to things differently, and I mean, when every writer knows that something about their books, especially characters, and if they're stereotypical in any way, I think they're going to be raked over the coals. I mean,
yeah, that's true.
If you write a character that hates homosexuals, people wonder if you have issues with gay people. I mean, if you write about dominant sex, people want into your bedrooms to see it's life from life experience, I mean,
right.
Our goal is really to make readers elicit a response, and even though we'd prefer them to like them, always going to please everyone.
No, of course you can't please all the people all the time. That's very true, and I get that. I get in that sense, I get that when you said I would like a woman to review it, you're saying this is more likely to chime with a woman's experience. Yeah. And I get that, and I think that was a sensible way to go. And I get that you're not saying, books should be my book is just for women.
Yeah.
And that you can write a book that's about women, like Atwood has done, that men will read and understand.
Yes, exactly. I mean, I've had a few men have read Bitter Like Orange Peel and really liked it, but I don't think they would be the majority. I think these readers have appreciated my writing style, and regardless of whether they like the characters or not.
Right, absolutely. Well, that's always, there's so many different elements in what makes a book work, that it's, teasing them apart is, well, that's the job of a critic.
Yes.
So it's got, books can work on a lot of different levels. But I mean, just to return to the character of Ivy, I think what interests me about a book in I thought the thing that might chime most with women,
Mm-hmm.
particularly women of a certain age, around about Ivy's age,
Mm-hmm.
which is 30, I
Yeah.
think, is that it's the daddy issues thing.
Yes.
It's the influence of the father on the daughter, which actually I think is quite interesting and hasn't been explored enough
Mm-hmm.
in literature. I think there's a lot about women relating to each other. And daughters struggling to separate from mothers and find their own identities and stuff like that. And there's quite a lot of literature about the male figure and women's lives being shaped by men.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's her whole career in a sense. Although she does go into women shaping women too, but there isn't that much that I can think of straight off the top of my head about the way that daughters and fathers interact.
Yeah.
Is that right, or am I missing something?
Well, I think you could be right. I mean, I off the top of my head, I can't think of any book that deals with that issue at all. There are a lot of mother-daughter books, but I can't think of father-daughter. Well, this really is a mother-daughter book as well, except you've got the added father factor on top of that. I mean, the way the daughters and mothers treat each other, I think, is a result of what's happened with their father.
Right, and what they actually do constantly is try and keep each other away from him.
Yeah.
It's like no one is allowed to have a relationship with Roger.
And it's not really, it's like they might be, they're jealous or something of him being involved in the other's lives, so they want him to themselves.
Right. You see, again, that's kind of like, there's an issue there about male attention being very precious to women.
Yes.
And more valuable than anything else. And you do see, and there is that. It's a very strongly ingrained instinct, I think, in the female psyche. Because, we won't get into it all, but you see women doing quite awful things to each other in order to get male attention and to themselves.
Yeah. I think.
Yeah. I mean, the whole issue of plastic surgery and, Yeah. Do you know what I mean? You know where I'm going with that? Yeah. And it's like, okay.
It's interesting, isn't it? That
it is.
I'm trying to think in terms of my own life whether I need a man's approval to do things. I don't think I do, but I do know that when my husband, for example, praises me about some work I've done, like I have this ultimate sense of achievement. I don't know what, like I still feel like I've achieved what I want to achieve, and I feel personally content. Right. But I think that's that added extra. You know what I mean?
Yep, absolutely. Yep, I'm the same.
Yeah,
and I'll admit that which is it's quite hard to admit, but not necessarily. But I think there's kind of, I don't know, that may be something to do with being married. That's the central person in your life, and they happen to be a man.
Yeah.
It may be that, if the central person in your life was a woman.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's your life partner, and you want to kind of, that their approval means a huge amount always.